Howdy y'all, Caleb here. Since our Croak Bomb lists are now dead, it's time to start looking at some other units. And I think Ripperdactyls might be an interesting one. So stick around and see how we can get quite a bit of damage out of these models and how I think they might see some new life in this new General's Handbook. So, we've talked about them briefly before in this new edition, and they were okay. Here's our efficiency chart that we've seen before. We can see that Ripperdactyls were up in our upper level of efficiency for points, but they never really seemed to play very well in the previous General's Handbook. They're real cheap, they're pretty fragile, they can do some damage, but we really couldn't get the same level of damage out of them as other units. But that might change now. We have new unit coherency rules, and I think this is a big change for a lot of units, and a handful of ones in our army benefit from them as well. Ripperdactyls, Agrodons, Croxagore. We have some units that really benefit from this new unit coherency. So let's look at this. The unit coherency is now from 2 to 6 models. They are coherent, which means they can stay in line together as long as they're within 1 inch of another model. And so before that was 2 to 5, now it's 2 to 6, which means you can now reinforce a unit of Ripperdactyls and you could play them as I'm showing you here. You can play them in a long line. You can spread them out. They make a really good screen with 6 of them with decent sized bases spread out slightly under 1 inch apart. You can make a big screen, but more importantly, they can all attack together now. Previously, before this new unit coherency, you could only really ever get 3 into combat, maybe 4 if you kept 2 in the back line. So it wasn't really efficient to reinforce them. Now, Ripperdactyls play really well in a unit of 6. Now, their models are kind of annoying because the wings are so long. They can get in the way of each other, but they do play well together in this big line. So that helps because we're going to get a lot of attacks out of these guys, and their points went down. They're now 110 for 3, so that makes them even cheaper to reinforce and play them well. Let's look a little at the war scroll here, and that'll set us up for how we're going to buff up this unit. First off, they do have a move of 12, which is pretty fast for a lot of units. It does fly, so that helps it out a lot. It's not as fast as stuff like pterodons, but 12 inches is pretty quick. That's the same movement of raptidons, so I want to see some differentiation of how this unit is better than raptidons. We'll get into that in a little bit. So move of 12, that's good. Wounds of 3 and a save of 5. The 5-up save is very fragile. You'll see that a lot on skinks. Skink units just end up being pretty fragile. A unit of 3 only has 9 wounds on a 5-up save. They cannot take a punch. If anything goes into them, they will die. Bravery of 5 is really bad. So on a unit of 6, you are going to have to pay attention to that bravery because you will run if they get attacked much. But anything's going to kill them anyway. They're probably not going to last to the bravery, to the battle shock phase, if I'm being honest. So in general, that bravery is not going to be that big a deal because if they've already taken a bunch of damage, they're gone anyway. So not real, if I'm being honest, not real exciting stuff there other than the move. Their melee weapons here, we have 5 attacks on each model. So in a unit of 3, you've got 15 attacks. There's ways that we can get that higher. If we look at their to hit and to wounds, it's pretty bad. 4s and 4s, no Ren 1 damage. And then on the jaws, it's 4s and 3s, -1, 2 damage. That one's better, but not real impressive. But this unit has some interesting buffs that it can take on it. So you do get +1 attacks for the Moonstone War Spear from the champion. Helps a little bit, not a lot. Here's where we get some interesting stuff. Bloat Toads. So you receive 1 Bloat Toad marker for each Ripperdactyl Rider unit in the army. So you do get 1 for each Ripperdactyl unit in the army. So if you have multiple ones in the army, you'll get multiple Bloat Toads. After the players have received their starting command points, but before the start of the first turn, you pick 1 enemy unit to have a Bloat Toad. For each Bloat Toad marker you have, place a Bloat Toad marker next to that enemy unit. You're designating these units to have a Bloat Toad. You're going to look at let's say you have 3 units of Ripperdactyls, like two of the units and 1 hero. You're gonna designate 3 different units to have bloat toads. What that does is that gives us this toad rage. If we look over here on this buff, in the combat phase, add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks made with this unit's tearing jaws that target an enemy unit that has a bloat toad. This really helps out a lot because the tearing jaws is what is doing the most damage in this, and so we're going to get quite a few extra dice through because of that +1 to hit and wound. So you pick the targets that you know you're going to attack. Luckily, this unit is fast enough. It's going to get there. And you should be able to hit the units that you attack or that you mark with the bloat toad. So that does help out. That frees up your command abilities to be spent on other things. You don't have to use it to pluses to hit or pluses to wound. That helps them out just with a natural buff. You do have to attack the units with bloat toads. That's unfortunate, but when it goes off, it's very good. Their other ability here is Swooping Dive. You subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with missile weapons that target this unit. In addition, if this unit is targeted by attacks made by an enemy unit that receive Unleash Hell command in that phase, those attacks only score a hit on unmodified roll of 6. This actually makes him a little able to withstand some shooting attacks, whether that's long range or in the Unleash Hell. It makes it kind of nice as a target to charge into something that you know has a really good Unleash Hell. Let's see, you're going into Sentinels or Blissbarb Archers or Tempesters or something. Send these in, and they might be able to withstand that because they're only going to be hitting on 6s. So a good unit for that little niche ability. We're going to take a look at some of the units that can buff up these Ripperdactyls. First up, the Ripperdactyl Chief is a good one. It pairs well into these Ripperdactyls because it has a special purpose for them. It also gets a bloat toad. I think that's of note, that it also does get a bloat toad that you can put out. And these bloat toads affect any of the Ripperdactyl units, so not just its own. So that's good. Taking the Ripperdactyl Chief, which I think you will if you're taking Ripperdactyls, you get another bloat toad. The big thing, though, here is the Ripperdactyl Assault. Once per battle. I hate once per battle stuff on heroes that are supposed to be buffing stuff, but beside the point. Once per battle, at the start of your combat phase, you pick 1 friendly unit with this ability on the battlefield to call a Ripperdactyl Assault. If you do so until the end of that phase, add 1 of the attack characteristics of melee weapons used by friendly Ripperdactyl units while they're wholly within 12 of that unit. So this Ripperdactyl Chief can give +1 to the attacks of both of the profiles of the Ripperdactyls. So where a unit of 3 had 5 attacks each, now that unit of 3 is going to have 7 attacks each. So a nice little bump up on the attacks. That really makes a big difference once you're adding a unit of 6. So on a unit of 6, you're adding an extra 12 attacks to their melee profile. So that is a nice little buff in output, especially for those 2 damage attacks that you're getting through. So that's what the Ripperdactyl Chief is for. You got to have him close to him because it is wholly within 12. But there's some ways that you can charge him in and do some battle tactics that way. It is the start of combat phase, so you don't really care if you lose him in that combat phase. He served his purpose at that point. Some other buffs are the Skink Star Priest. This is one that has a really good buffing piece for units that have a lot of attacks. So Serpent Staff, in your hero phase, you can pick 1 friendly Seraphon unit wholly within 12 of this unit. If you do so until your next hero phase, if the unmodified wound roll for that attack made with that unit is a 6, it causes 1 mortal wound to the target in addition to any damage it inflicts. So this is good that it happens in the hero phase. You can pop this for free onto any unit and then send them off to do what they want to do. So a good way to load up a unit of Ripperdactyls, which are headed out to attack the enemy. A unit of 6 is going to have over 40 attacks. This is a decent target for the Serpent Staff to give it some mortal wound output in addition to their normal damage. Also, a Skink Star Priest has some good spells to cast. Blazing Starlight doesn't necessarily help this much here, but what it does is it gives us some access to spell lores. One of those is this spell on the right-hand side. This is for Skinks and Starborn. We've got Speed of Huanche. It has a casting value of 6, a range of 18, a nice healthy range there. I like that a lot. And usually we buff that up quite a bit. We can pick one Cruxigore or Skink unit. That's not a monster, wholly within range, visible to caster. That unit can make a normal move. So this is good that this is, you can pick when this happens. So you can load up all your other buffs on the Ripperdactyls and then cast this one. And they'll get to move a 12 in the hero phase. So they're already moving 12 in the movement phase. They're moving 12 in the hero phase here. You can get these guys wherever you need to go. They fly. They're not going to have a problem there. So very, very quick unit all of a sudden. A total movement of 24 inches in your turn. Then they've got their charge. They should be able to get wherever you want them to go. Very good spell for them. Another one is the Realm Sphere magic for this General's Handbook is Horror Frost. Horror Frost, we've talked about this one before on other units, and it buffs any unit that you can cast it on. It doesn't have a high value. It does have a high value. But normally, any of our wizards that are going to be casting this are at least, usually about +2 to cast. And then you've got Primal Dice if you want to add to that. So a casting value of 8 isn't that bad for this spell for us. Has a range of 12, which will buff that with the Astrolith to 18. And we'll pick one unit and roll a d3, and you can change one of their profiles to match either to hit, to wound, or rend to that d3 roll. So a great use of that, let's go back up to the Ripperdactyl Riders, is getting their Tearing Jaws up to -3 rend. That really helps them get more of that damage through. If you roll low, let's say a 1 or a 2, or I guess a d3 that equals a 1 or a 2, then you could either change the to hit or to wound. Both of those can still get +1 to hit and wound from the Bloat Toads, but you could always add that to the hit. It would go down to 1 or 2. If anything's -1 to hit, then maybe that you counteract that. But really what you'd look for is that rend to help get the extra damage through. So let's talk about some damage, average damage output here. I kind of like to run these numbers for different units to see what what can I expect on average when they attack. So we've got some different numbers run here for the 6 Ripperdactyls. We get our +1 to hit from Bloat Toad. We have our +1 attacks from the Ripperdactyl Chief. We have hopefully +3 to rend from Horror Frost. And then our 6s to wound equal mortal wound from the Star Priest Staff. This isn't an unreasonable amount of buffs. We're not going crazy here. It doesn't seem like Seraphon in the new book has as many layered buffs as it used to. We have a few, but we can't just quite go as crazy as it used to be. We don't really need to use like all-out attack on this unit because it already gets that from the Bloat Toad. But we can see some numbers here, and they get pretty respectable as we load these things on. You see 6 start off pretty low at about 9.5 to 4 up save. But once we add the Bloat Toad, we see a marked improvement. Once we get the Assault on there, we just keep adding more and more damage on there. And then Horror Frost really kind of jumps us up to almost 30 damage versus a 4-up save. And the Staff really just helps us with that lower saves and helps us get some mortal wounds through. Because we are throwing a lot of dice at it, that will tend to produce some mortal wounds. Not a ton, but since we already need casters for these spells, a Star Priest seems pretty natural fit into this to just bump us up a little bit more damage output from the mortal wounds. So in general, for not a whole lot, two heroes that really synergize well with this and some easy spells that we can get. And you're at 33 damage versus a 4-up save. That's good for what the Ripperdactyls are doing. That's not more than some of the other units in the game, but that is pretty decent for a unit that is pretty cheap. 6 Ripperdactyls is that'd be 220 points. Ripperdactyl Chief adds another 110 onto that. Star Priest you'll already have in your list probably anyway, so that's not really a tax for this. But for that package, it comes out to be pretty efficient for getting quite a bit of damage. One thing to note, as I'm comparing these to something like the Raptidons, Raptidons are more efficient, but they don't reinforce as well. Because they have a unit of 5, you reinforce them. Now you're at a unit of 10, and you've got unit coherency problems at that point. So really, you're only getting in about 7 of them instead of all 10. Here with Ripperdactyls, they reinforce really nicely, and you can have a higher damage output from this unit because of that. Raptidons are still more efficient, but Ripperdactyls have a higher potential than a single unit of Raptidons do. I have a sample list here to take a look at, and came up with this tonight. Hopefully it's decent, but it gets some of the stuff that I want into a Fangs of Sotek list that really kind of focuses on my Ripperdactyls. So I'm taking this in Fangs of Sotek, and that allows me to do some interesting things. The Raptidons are battle line in this case, but it also allows me to redeploy up to three units of skinks in the same turn. So that includes just about the entire army, other than the Source Astrolith Bear. So it really allows you to play in the movement phase a whole lot and deny the enemy charges, deny them movement as needed. So to lean into that, I took a lot of units. I don't really care too much about the drops. Drops are 7. You might outdrop 1 or 2 armies, maybe. Not too many, to be honest. And I wanted the extra enhancement for spells so that I can really lean into those spells that I was talking about to buff up the Ripperdactyls. So for that, I do take the Command Entourage to give me the extra enhancement, and then Battle Regiment, throwing a bunch of stuff in there. I would have loved to take the Battalion that gives me extra damage versus Wizards, but you can't take them with Raptidons or Ripperdactyls, so not really any point in taking them for the Skinks. I guess if you really don't care about your drops, you could throw Skinks in there and put everything else in the Battle Regiment, just so that maybe you could kill a wizard with some Skinks. Anyway, so my leaders here are going to be a Salon. He's going to be my general with Lord of Celestial Resonance. That allows us to get more summoning points for every spell that is cast or unbind. Very good for the Salon because you want extra summoning. So that's almost a guaranteed take with the Salon. For my spells, I'm taking Comet's Call, and I'm taking Stellar Tempest as my enhancement spell for him because I want him to do some extra damage in the game. So Comet's Call, Stellar Tempest are very good on him. You can usually get both of those off with this setup and hit something in the army, or in the opponent's army. Then I've got my 2 Skink Star Priests. I'm taking Speed of Huanche on both of them just because I think that's so critical to the list. In a list of board control, being able to run and still charge is very good. And so I really like, or not run and charge, being able to move in the hero phase is very good for board control. One of them I'm taking with Hoarfrost, so that allows me to get extra rend, hopefully. Both of them can use their serpent staffs onto different units. Those staffs go really well onto Raptidons as well as Ripperdactyls. The second Star Priest I'm taking Merciless Blizzard on. That's that 4d6 mortal wound spell. This is a good target to teleport this Star Priest forward if you need to and try to blow up some target. You might blow him up, but that's why we've got 2 of them. I would have loved to take a Starseer here, but I didn't have enough points to fit it in and fit everything else I wanted, so that's why we had to downgrade to a Star Priest. Still a good piece. I do like the Starseer because it's that double caster and has some kill wards and stuff like that. So my next hero is a Saurus Astrolith Bear, taking him with Arcane Tome to give me an extra cast, and just buffs everybody around it. Gives us a 6-up ward save, buffs all the casting, all the distance, +1 to cast. I mean, just a great piece there. Ripperdactyl Chief to use his assault for the Ripperdactyls. I've also got 3 units of Ripperdactyls in this list, so I do have 3 Bloat Toads that gives me a little bit more options on what to attack. Battle line, I'm taking 3 units of Raptidon Chargers, still very efficient, but this will probably be my wave 2 of attacks. So my Ripperdactyls can go across the board turn 1, hit those targets, and then Raptidons can maybe clean up what is trying to score objectives. I do have 3 units of Skinks just to help out with board control and movement and all the redeploy shenanigans that they can do. A good unit here in Fangs of Sotek for keeping the enemy at bay. They're good screens. They're good board play. Everything. Then I'm using my reinforcement points over here on the Ripperdactyls. I'm taking 2 units of 6 Ripperdactyls. That's going to be my hammer in this unit, in this army. I don't really have an anvil. But these Ripperdactyls are going to be our hammer. So they are going to go out and they should be able to kill off the targets that you have selected with the bloat toads. I'm also got Gymnids in here to help shut off commands. This really helps with the Ripperdactyls, you know, as they're attacking something, they're not going to be able to use all-out defense. They're not going to be able to use Inspiring Presence, Unleash Hell, all that types of stuff, redeploy. So Gymnids will really help this in make sure you get your damage through, make sure you kill the target you're fighting, and play the rest of the game. Gymnids is great right now, so I really like that. I think I've talked about my battalions, Command Entourage, and Battle Regiment, and then extra enhancements of spells for all the wizards. So a roll like that comes in at 1995, 127 wounds, which isn't too bad for a Seraphon list. I have a lot of units, and I think it's more of a finesse army here. You know, this army is not going to take a hit. Your anvil in this army is your number of units and good board play. So as you try to keep your skinks out of combat, running around, hitting things with your Raptidons and your Ripperdactyls, and then summoning in as many screens as you can to keep playing the game that way. So you can do some damage in your spells. That helps. And then Ripperdactyls can hit, Raptidons clean up, skinks score the objectives. At least that's how it works in my head. Let me know what y'all think about this list and what you think about Ripperdactyls. Do you think the unit cohesion stuff has made them good enough to take now? And what are your plans if you plan to do so? Let me know below in the comments what a Ripperdactyl list might look like for you. And we'll see you on the next one.